Super Bowl Sunday, but first, let's go on the record. Fight for the seventh, Democrat on Democrat. Ayanna Pressley leaning in. Her target, Congressman Michael Capuano seat. Will this be the year of the woman?
The greatest, strongest, richest nation in the world should not have to leave anyone behind.
The Bay State's Joe K3 takes the national stage. Did his message about Donald Trump's America resonate through the rest of the country?
We have unlimited authority to do virtually anything that we want once we know what the facts are.
And managing the fallout from after revelations of a multi-million-dollar sex assault settlement are confirmed. The State Gaming Commission's next move. Democrat for Governor Jay Gonzalez makes his case against Republican Charlie Baker. He's our guest today.
From WCVB Channel 5, the inside word from Washington to Beacon Hill. Today's newsmakers are going on the record.
Good morning, I'm Janet Wu, along with News Center 5's Karen Anderson. Ed Harding is in Minnesota getting ready for the Super Bowl, as we all are. Our guest this morning is Jay Gonzalez, one of the three Democrats running for Bay State governor. This Needham resident is no stranger to Beacon Hill. He was the budget director in the Deval Patrick administration. He is a graduate of Dartmouth College and Georgetown Law School. Thank you very much for being with us. And
Thanks
I know
for having me.
You'd rather be getting ready for the game, but thank you for being here in the
It's good to be
studio
Ed,
with us.
who's actually at the game.
That's true.
Yeah.
Let's start with Steve Wynn. Now, Steve Wynn's casino license in Everett may be on the line because of recently released sexual assault allegations. Are you confident in the Gaming Commission after having missed this the first time?
Here's what I'm confident in, that the Gaming Commission at this point should revoke the license from Wynn Company. The actions of Steve Wynn are absolutely reprehensible. They're an abuse of power. It's criminal activity. The sexual harassment and assault allegations are unbelievable. And we've got, as these news reports come out, it has become clear that the Wynn Company knew about this activity. There were reports about this to them. They admitted recently that they knew about this sexual harassment settlement that he entered into. And they didn't do anything about it. They didn't even disclose it to the Gaming Commission. This is totally unacceptable. We need to stop tolerating the intolerable. And the Gaming Commission should revoke the license. When do we start treating this criminal activity the same way that they would money laundering, where they would yank the license right away? As long as their investigation confirms what this thorough report of the Wall Street Journal shows, this license should be yanked.
So given how far they are in the process and progress with building there, then what should happen now?
Well, the Gaming Commission will need to figure out how to best transfer that license in a way that the project can move forward. I mean, obviously we have an interest in it moving forward with as little disruption as possible, and there are examples of similar situations in the past in other states. But we need to take a stand on this. And, you know, this is one of those areas where Governor Baker, once again, has not taken a strong enough stand. He points the finger at the Gaming Commission. Well, they'll figure it out, just like he did with other situations. We were talking before about the state's Group Insurance Commission, which just had a big mess this past week where they blindsided state employees and retirees by making a decision that Baker seemed to point the finger at them and pretended he had no idea about. When is he going to take responsibility and actually take ownership for the decisions that are being made in the state and stand up as a matter of principle that this sexual harassment and this type of conduct is totally intolerable and unacceptable and shouldn't be what we condone in Massachusetts?
The Gaming Commission is a little bit more independent than the GIC or many other state agencies. Are you saying, in other words, the Gaming Commission should have known before this and should have done better investigation into Wynn's personal sort of affairs or personal life before they awarded the license?
It sounds like they did a very thorough investigation. What also appears to be true, and this is my big gripe, is the company didn't disclose to the Gaming Commission during this process where the Gaming Commission is determining the suitability of the company. They didn't disclose that they knew this stuff, which is why I think the license needs to be yanked. And the governor, while the Gaming Commission is independent, he is the governor. And he should stand up as a matter of principle on behalf of the citizens of this state and say, this type of conduct cannot and should not be tolerated in Massachusetts, and we're not going to condone it. And as a result, call on the Gaming Commission to revoke the license.
Another favorite topic of yours is the MBTA. You're a big critic of the way that the MBTA is being run, and as Deval Patrick's top finance guy, you understand the system pretty well. But the Baker administration argues many of the current problems are due to a lack of adequately updating the aging system, including during your watch. What's your response to that? Are you partially, or your administration, or under your administration, partially responsible for not upgrading the system the years that you were there?
I can speak to what I was responsible for, which wasn't managing the MBTA. As the budget guy, we did invest more money in the T. There was a tax increase that dedicated more money to the T, and we funded more of the T's projects through the capital budget that were never getting funded before. The biggest reason the T has a problem right now is it has been starved for revenue for decades, in part because of Charlie Baker's Big Dig finance plan, which foisted huge Big Dig cost overruns onto the T. Irresponsibly.
And there was nothing you could have done about that to start?
Well, we could start the process of getting the T more resources that it needed to deal with the backlog of projects it has, which is what we did. Now, having said that, there's a lot that needs to be done, and I don't think our current governor is working with a sense of urgency or taking ownership on this issue either. This is another example of a situation where service levels are terrible. He points the finger at the private operator, the commuter rail, and says it's their fault and they need to do a better job. He's the governor. He needs to take responsibility for this and take accountability. His plan is we're going to have the system in a state of good repair in 15 years. That is totally unacceptable. We need to acknowledge we need to invest more in the T. It's one of the reasons I support the millionaire's tax, which would generate meaningful new revenue. We desperately need to get our transportation system to a place where people can depend on it to get to work on time. It is one of the worst systems in the country. And if anything is going to drag Massachusetts backwards, it's going to be our transportation system. But our economy depends on it.
There have been tremendous changes since 2015 in that winter. All of the investments in infrastructure. Can you at least admit there's been a lot of improvements there? So,
Karen, the number one issue I hear when I'm out on the campaign trail is people complaining about the T. The service levels are no better. I actually rode the T with a number of riders to understand their experience. There's a rider named Libby whose experience is representative, who takes the T from Jamaica Plain into Cambridge every day. She told me about a recent experience on one of those freezing cold days where she stood on the platform and the countdown clock said 1 minute until her train was going to come, and she waited 20 minutes before giving up and calling an Uber because she was freezing cold and couldn't wait anymore. It's totally unacceptable. People are enduring what they shouldn't have to endure, and it is affecting people's quality of life in a very real way. We need leadership on this. We need to acknowledge we need additional revenue for the system, and we need a governor who's going to treat it like an emergency. And 15 years is unacceptable. We need to do it much quicker.
To another topic, the Dreamers. Governor Baker has been an outspoken supporter of DACA, despite critics in his party. Now, do you believe he's put enough action, though, behind his words?
Well, on the whole issue of immigration, I think we need a much stronger governor on this point. So, no, I don't think he's advocating forcefully enough on that issue or many others in Washington. Beyond that, he opposed Syrian refugees resettling in Massachusetts. He does not support legislation called the Safe Communities Act, which was the first piece of legislation I supported, that would ensure that state and local law enforcement resources are focused on enforcing state and local laws instead of doing the work of federal immigration officials, which isn't their job. He ordered the state police to do the work of federal immigration officials. So on a lot of these issues, in an environment, thanks to our president, where there's a lot of fear among the immigrant community in Massachusetts, we've got a governor that's contributing to that fear instead of sending a clear signal that he is here for every single person in this state and that everyone is included and welcome.
Okay, so speaking about included and welcome, we're going to go to the pop quiz, and there's something.
Oh boy!
And this topic this week is something that I think just about everyone's interested in, which has to do with Tom Brady.
Yes.
Because all eyes are on Minnesota today. So here's the first question. Sports Illustrated recently published a long profile on Tom Brady. There was an anecdote where Gisele Bündchen asked a longtime friend to convince Tom to do something. What did Mrs. Brady want her friend to convince Tom to do?
I have absolutely no idea.
She was trying to get her husband to retire. But,
Really?
as we all know,
I'm so glad she wasn't successful.
well, according to Sports Illustrated's J.A. Feely, the Brady friend never presented her argument to him. So maybe that's part of the reason why he's still playing today.
Thank God.
Question 2. What Boston sports radio host has been suspended indefinitely after making an insulting remark about Mr. Brady's 5-year-old daughter?
I'm failing this pop quiz so far.
Do you
I have
even know
no
about
idea.
the controversy? Have you heard about that?
No, I don't.
You've been too busy
I don't,
campaigning.
yes.
Well, anyways, the reporter is Alex Reamer of WEEI. Brady says it's very disappointing when you hear that, certainly with my daughter or any child. But then a couple of days later, when he was in Minnesota, he said he did not want to see Reamer lose his job. But,
Interesting. I'm too busy when I have time to watch or listen to media. I'm always watching Channel 5.
Well, I have good news and bad news. Good news is we're going to a break. Bad news, we're still coming back with
All
two
right,
more
fine.
pop quiz
Okay.
questions about Mr. Brady. We'll be right back.